The Big Bad Wolf. I don't remember any of the story from my own recollection. My parents have recounted it for me. For reference, I'm a female with two older brothers who grew up in a no need to lock your doors type of suburban area where nothing seemed to happen. When my brothers and I were younger, I was about 4 years old, making them 8 and 9. My brothers played on a town little league team. My parents would go to every game. There were always a lot of other parents and other kids at the games, and one lady, who had a few kids on the team, was really friendly, and my parents would often talk to her during games. She always invited my older brother over to her house swimming and to play with her kids for no good reason. It just never worked out. We went away most weekends and were just generally really busy. But it was always in the plans that sometime it'd work out, and my brother would be able to go over and do swimming. One day, after the mother and her kids were not at a few games, my parents asked about her, and another parent looked at my dad, completely baffled, and said, "You didn't hear? She and her husband were arrested, and their kids went into foster care. Apparently, they would invite kids over to use the pool, and then their kids would either send the visitors or friends into the house, or the wife would call them inside on their own, and the husband, who was never at any of the games, would put on a wolf mask and costume and do God knows what to the kids. He was arrested for child molestation, telling them if they told their parents, the big bad wolf would come and get them. By sheer luck, my brother was not subject to this, but several of his teammates were. To top it off, my parents said that the mother absolutely loved me and would always talk about how cute I was, etc. After that, my parents wouldn't let us go over friends' houses without them for a while. This is not a horror movie. About 2 years ago on Halloween, my friends got a party bus. I really wanted to hand out candy to the kids. I mean, this has nothing to do with the story, but when I grown up, we lived way out in the country and never got trick-or-treaters, so I was really amped up about finally getting to do it. Because I was handing out candy, I didn't meet up at my friend's house. I went to the bar they were at and got on the bus there. We go from bar to bar for a while until closing time, and my friend says I can ride back to her house, spend the night, and she'll take me to my car in the morning. But I had only one beer several hours ago, and knew I was actually okay to drive, and the bar we were at was only about 5 blocks from my car, so I decided to hoof it on my own. Something I normally never do, but I felt pretty brave in my superhero costume. Alright, it was actually a medieval wench costume, but I still felt very heroic. I headed off on my own as she stepped on the bus and she called out for me to watch out for weirdos. I laughed and kept going, but as the blocks passed, I realized that the street that had been crowded with costume revelers before now was completely empty. I put my cloak tighter around me and started moving a little faster. It was very well lit with street lamps, and I was passing a bright Family Dollar sign when I saw it. A flipping clown, down at the end of the block, heading towards me. We were definitely going to pass each other unless I wanted to cross the street, then cross back again, because my car was right around the corner. It was late, and Halloween, so I figured whatever and kept going. The clown, however, sees that there's no one around, and that I'm a girl, so he starts laughing, evil clown style, and dancing towards me, but I'm stubborn. I decide to stay on the closest path to my car, and that's it. He gets closer, and I'm a little more nervous, but I remind myself that this is not a horror movie. He finally reaches me and stays in my path. I stop and stare him down. He laughs again, and twirls around in a little dance that keeps going, and then keeps going on his way. I kept an eye on him, but he just kept drunkenly dancing and laughing as I got to my car and drove away. That's as close to being in a horror movie setting as I ever want to be. Don't go into that barn. So in 2012, my then girlfriend and I went to a big year-long road trip through the States, working on farms along the way for room and board, and ended our trip by driving across Canada, west to east, stopping back in Nova Scotia where we lived. At some point we got a puppy, and around the time we got to Alberta, with an extra mouth to feed, we decided money was running out. Since I am a carpenter, we decided to find a place to rent, and I would get a job for a few months before we kept going on our trip. We scrolled through Kijiji, Canadian Craigslist, and eventually found an ad for a place. This guy lived in a cool-looking house by himself, just a short drive from the place where I'd found a job. He wanted someone to move in with him to help pay the bills. We started corresponding with him a bit by email, told him I was going to work in the area, and my girlfriend would be staying home with a puppy. And being desperate and having been accustomed to trusting strangers throughout this long trip, we agreed to send him a deposit and take the offer. We got to his place a few days later. It was in the middle of nowhere, and there were no neighbors, but we'd known that before. He was about 30 to 35 years old, small-framed, just looked like a regular working country dude, except his expression was weird, kind of frightening looking, like he was always looked ashamed of himself or something like that. He was fine with our dog being inside, though he had a dog that wasn't allowed inside. This is the cold Canadian North. Right away when he met us at the door, I felt there was something off about him. It made me feel very uneasy, especially since I would be going to work every single day, leaving my girlfriend alone with this creepy guy, but she didn't seem worried, and I didn't want to be controlling, so I let it go. The first night we were there, he wanted to have a few drinks with us. We obliged, politely, and he bought a few cans of shitty watery beer out and meekly drank his while sitting across the kitchen table from us. We tried to relax the situation, asked him some friendly questions about himself, but his answers were brief and quiet. He seemed to want friendship, but also seemed completely unsure of how to get it. He went over a few rules he had. Number 1 was that we stayed out of his room, which was obviously fine. Number 2 was that we not go into the basement, kind of weird, and number 3 was that we stay away from the barn. By this point, I can imagine the news headlines. Nova Scotian couple found murdered, bound in barn. That night, I didn't sleep very much. I wasn't supposed to start work for a couple days, so I just stayed up reading and playing with our pup. I heard his truck pull out of the driveway pretty early in the morning, and I headed for the basement. It was pretty bare. Just washing and drying machines and some lawn chairs, but I opened a closet door and found a weird nurse costume that looked like it was marketed for sexual purposes, a roll of duct tape, a set of handcuffs, a shotgun, and a box of shells, all sitting together on the same shelf. I woke up my girlfriend, explained that she no longer had any say in the matter, and that we were leaving before he got home. We sent him a message after we'd left, lying, saying a family member had taken sick, and we were moving back home. He never offered to return our money, and we had no more contact with him. I'm still waiting to see him in the news. My ex thinks I'm a worrier. Her parents thanked me profusely. I love seeing you wet. I was always a theater geek. So freshman year of high school, I was in the school play, Reviving Ophelia, which was actually about an abusive relationship. Oh, the irony. John didn't do theater, but I met him through mutual theater friends. The group of us would always hang out while waiting for our rides after rehearsal, and soon John was somehow always there to hang out with us, be beside us. He always said he was either stayed after for a club meeting or got stuck in detention for skipping classes. John was also in some of my classes, and would text me or Facebook message me after school, so we got to know each other really well. One day, one of our mutual theater friends, Sarah, and I were talking. and she mentioned how John was basically in love with me. I laughed it off like, yeah, okay, whatever. And she started poking me playfully, saying, "He calls you the Bella to his Edward. I'm pretty sure he only gets attention to get to stay after and see you." This was all pretty light teasing, but John was a bit of a troublemaker, the class clown, who always got kicked out of class. And I was the goody two-shoes. I liked talking to John, but I didn't want that much attention from him. So, being the immature freshman that I was, I didn't see how to handle the situation any other way than cutting him off completely. I sometimes regret this choice, thinking that if I had talked to him and let him down easy the next few years, wouldn't have been a living nightmare. But honestly, I don't think that would have made a difference. John messaged me relentlessly, asking what happened, why I wouldn't talk to him. Again, I was immature and I didn't know how to handle it, so I didn't respond. He would still show up to our after-rehearsal hangouts, but I started doing homework while waiting for my ride, as an excuse not to talk to anyone. John moved his seat to sit behind me in every one of our classes together. When the teachers asked him what he was doing, he would say he forgot his glasses at home and had to sit closer to the board. He would whisper behind me, "Still's not going to talk to me, Nikki?" Nikki's a mute now. If I answered a question in class, I got, "Oh, so you can talk." He'd lean forward and blow on my hair, or whack it with his pencil, anything to try to get a rise out of me. If the teachers noticed, they told him to knock it off. But like I said, John was trouble, and even the teachers got tired of arguing with him after a while. His dramatic "who, me?" would never fail to get a laugh out of the class, though. At the end of all the school shows, the same kid would throw a cast party. His parents gave him the house for the weekend, and his older brother supplied the alcohol. After hours of begging my parents to let me stay over at the party, they finally let me go. Now, being a freshman, and this my first night of drinking, I went overboard and ended up passing out in a random bedroom somewhere. John had been at the party, but we mostly stayed to opposite sides of the house. That is, until I woke up with him on top of me. My pants were pulled down, and he was holding my hand, shoving it down his own pants. I tried to pull my hand back, but he held it firmly inside his pants. When I tried to shove him off, he whispered, "Be quiet. There are other people asleep in the room. Just relax." I told him if he didn't let go, I was going to scream, and he let go of my hand, and I shoved him off, running out of the room. I found my friend Sarah asleep on the couch downstairs, and laid on the floor in the front of the couch, now wide awake. I started to hear my name tauntingly being whispered as footsteps descended down the stairs. The stairs faced the back of the couch, so as long as he didn't come around, he wouldn't see me. I pulled myself close to the couch and prayed he would just leave. After pausing for a few moments, he eventually did. Waiting for my parents to pick me up in the morning, watching him skip around laughing with everyone like nothing happened, was a torture. Things got worse from there. He started messaging me relentlessly again, saying we needed to talk. When that didn't work, he started leaving letters in my locker. At first they were angry, telling me I made him do what he did. He was only reacting to my actions because I ignored him. I was pulling away and I made him do it. Then they were pleading that he loved me. He just wanted to talk to me. He couldn't forget about me. I didn't tell my parents about any of this. They were helicopter parents who had just given me a bit of freedom I desperately wanted, and I didn't want to prove them right telling them what happened. I didn't tell my theater friends because they liked John, and they were for the most part my only friends. They just thought John and I hadn't got into an argument and weren't talking to each other. John still came to our hangouts. He would always find ways to touch me, sitting next to me, our knees touching, leaning over to talk to someone else. His letters started acting like everything was okay. He would refer to conversations I had with the group like they had been conversations between him and I. John was very popular, and I was about to find out, had lots of loyal little followers. People I didn't even know started coming up to me in the hallways, asking why I was being a bitch and not talking to John. He'd use other people's phones to call me. When I picked up and heard it was him, I would immediately hang up. Sometimes, I think, he would send out these randos to see if I was telling anyone about what happened. He even got teachers hooked into this whole friggin' mess. One teacher pulled me aside after class and told me John had come to her very upset, and she thought it was a good idea if John and I sat down together and had a talk. I declined, saying I didn't think it would be a good idea. After pestering a couple more times, saying John was really upset, she finally let it go. The letters and rumors started saying John was going to kill himself if I didn't talk to him. If we had any classes together in the following years, the very first day, he would make sure to stay after with the teachers to talk about our problematic relationship and how he was very hurt by me and couldn't be placed into groups with me. He still sat behind me every chance he got. When musical season came around, I did stage crew. I can act, but I sound like a dying cat whenever I try to sing. And guess who else joined? You guessed it, John. Stage crew was on the weekends, and it was relatively unsupervised. I could tell you many stories about John during stage crew, but honestly it'd be way too long, so I'll tell you one. He got the other stage crew boys to start calling me tight pants, as I wore a pair of tight sweatpants to crew one day. Threw them out that very night. The props were in the school attic. You need to go to the third floor and walk down 2 long hallways to get to it, and the lights were usually off as it was the weekend. Each hallway had a set of locked doors at the end, so I would have to get the keys from the tool closet, walk to the end of the hallway, unlock the door, walk down another hallway, unlock the door to the attic. I walked down the first hallway pretty quickly, as dark, empty school hallways are always rather creepy, and was fiddling with the lock, feeling like I was being watched. Right as I unlocked the door, I felt an arm snake around my waist, picking me up, and a hand wrapped against my mouth. I start squirming and screaming and nailed him with my elbow and was let go. John was kneeled over, clutching his stomach, and another crew kid was bent over laughing hysterically. They had been hiding behind where the lockers ended, and the door started waiting for me, knowing I would have to walk down there to get to the attic. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" I yelled, trying to rein in tears. The last thing I wanted was John to see me cry. "Oh, come on, Nikki, it was just a joke. We just wanted to scare you," crew guy said, still laughing. "Yeah, Nikki, don't be such a tight pants," John said, laughing now too. I stormed off without another word into the attic, locking the door behind me. I was crying all the while, hearing shouts down the hallway. "It was a joke, Nikki, we're sorry," followed by more laughter. After that, rumors started circulating that I gave John a blowjob at the cast party, that we had sex in the tool closet during stage crew, etc. Sarah, the theater friend who I didn't talk to much anymore, came up to me at school one day and told me that John was saying some pretty fucked up things with the theater boys. He would relay to them in detail what he did to me, saying things like she had the tightest pussy, and at this point, Sarah was so uncomfortable, she stopped hanging around them as much and felt the need to tell me. Now, I had randos coming up to me not only calling me a bitch, but a whore, and I had had enough. I wrote a letter to John telling him I didn't want to hear my name ever come out of his mouth, and wrote down all the things I heard he was telling people, and that I would report him if he didn't stop. And finally, things got better. No more letters from him. Only an occasional person would call me a bitch in the hallways. It was all good. Until one day, I was walking to my parked car in the pouring rain, and Johnny drives by in the opposite direction. I noticed him staring, but he was driving in the opposite direction, so I wasn't too worried. Until a minute or so later, I saw him pulling into the plaza as I was walking into it. He rolls down his window and asked if I want a ride to my car, which my car was literally 1 parking lot away, and already soaping wet, so offering to drive me there was pointless. I say no thanks and kept walking, and he kept driving slowly next to me. When we get to the actual lot, I sprint to my car and jump inside. I think he's gone, but when I go to reverse, and he has his car right behind me, sandwiching me in, he motions at me to roll down my window, and I do. He yells out his window, "I love seeing you wet," and I flip him off, laying on my horn to attract attention. He laughs, rolls back up his window and speeds away. The only other time I heard from him in high school was once when he asked if I had shown someone his letters, and after prom when he left me a drunk voicemail saying I was a beautiful woman and he still loved me. There are more stories, one of which happened while I was babysitting during college and walked by his house while he was home. But this post is already really long, and I think you get the sense that John made high school hell for me. So John, I am not your Bella. Edward was a stalker too, but let's please not meet again. Don't shoot, I'm a domestic animal. I don't scare easily, I really don't. I'm a 23-year-old female, but I'm tall and strong. My family owns a large poultry farm in the middle of nowhere, and sometimes I volunteer to stay there during the night, on my own. So I'm not afraid of being alone or walking in the dark. It happened in the middle of summer, and happened mainly because of my younger sister. She and a group of her friends decided to throw a party in one of the friends' family cabins in the middle of the woods. I know that doesn't sound good. I've seen all those horror movies. Obviously, I wasn't happy about them going along with this plan, but I really try to be a cool sister, so I let her go, with a condition that if something happens, even a smallest thing, I would be the one called immediately. The day comes, and I prepare for everything. She gets all she might need, from the first aid kit to pepper spray, packed to her backpack, and I drive her there to see the cabin. It's not a long drive, just about 20 minutes out of the city, but as I've never been there before, I get a wrong turn, and instead of getting to a cabin, we get to see a wooden hunting tower and the end of the road. We turn around and in a few minutes navigate the cabin, so I leave her there with her friends and head back home. Around the midnight, I get the call from my sister. Everybody got really drunk, some people are actually sick, and guys ate all the food. I jump out of bed, get into my sheep onesie, this is actually important, and drive to the 24/7 shop to get some hangover food, aspirin, and loads of water. On my way to them, I keep rehearsing a speech about adulthood and how irresponsible they are. It's a really good speech, but then something strange happens. I'm totally out of the town, way out of the living area. There's only grass and trees around me. Even the road is a dirt one, where it would be hard to pass a car. It's that narrow. But I can see car lights coming straight to me. I start thinking it's somebody's parents coming back from the cabin. But it's hardly believable that any of the kids had the courage to call their moms. Suddenly the lights disappear, and that creeps me out a bit, because there's no turn on the road. On this part of the road, where we are, it comes back and disappears again. Repeats that a few more times. I'm like trying to tell me something, but the car keeps coming closer. I slow down, trying to find a logical explanation for what's going on, but I can't find it. I dial 112, but do not press call, as I don't know if it's actually a threat. The next minute was the longest in my life, and I can remember every second of it. So the car stops right in front of me, blocking my road forward. My only option is to go back, but if I want to run, there's no space to turn around. I remember that. I've seen a bit more space a few hundred meters back, so my plan is to get there backwards, going backwards. Do a quick 180 turn and speed as fast as I can, back to the town, on my way, call the police, and hope that they meet me halfway. The only problem is that you can't go backwards as fast as you go forward, and it'll cut me off my turnaround spot. I might be in deep shit. The only logical thing to do seems to be waiting. I have to wait until that somebody gets out of their car and starts walking to mine. Then I can win a few seconds till they get back into their car. So I sit there, waiting, and prepare myself. Get my car in a rear gear, put my foot on the clutch, and another just a millimeter from pressing gas, looking through the mirrors for the last time to see if there's any visible holes in the road behind me. My heart is pounding so loud that I'm worried I'll die of a heart attack before even trying to save myself. I have to keep telling myself that I only have one chance, and I have to be focused then. Two huge guys get out of the car. They look a bit over 50. Both have beards, and they're dressed like They would like to hide in the dark. They stand next to the car for a second. I get ready to duck if I see a gun. Instead, one of them turns on a flashlight and points it straight at me. Well, awesome. Now I can't really see them. It really blinds me. I decide to count till 4 and start driving backwards, but I don't even get to 2 when I hear a laugh. Not a creepy or a strange laugh. They're laughing like they've seen the funniest thing in their lives. The one with the flashlight turns it away because he's laughing so hard that he has to hold himself to the car door, and I'm sitting there in my car almost dying of fear and confusion. Then it hits me. I actually know one of them. He's the leader of a local hunting group, and he brings meat samples for my dad to test in search of any diseases. My dad is a local vet, so he walks forward, but not too close to my car, and starts apologizing if they scared me. They've actually been patrolling this area for a few weeks now, because somebody was poaching and things like that are staining the reputation of a hunting group, and this road is used only to get to the forest where that hunting tower is. So they were ready to catch the poacher and call the police, but instead of him, they saw a girl in a sheep costume, practically shitting herself. Next day, they even called my dad and apologized, and asked if I was okay. After a few months, I can actually laugh about it, even as it was the scariest event of my life. And for the poacher, well, I hope you never meet them.